Investment schemes. Watchtower describes the commercial world as belonging to Satan. The religious, political, and commercial elements of this world, including their information channels, are under the influence of the god of this system of things, Satan the devil. Watchtower study ed. August 2015. Watch your associations in these last days. Satan would like nothing better than to have us spend all our time and energy as slaves to his commercial world. Watchtower study 2017 July p.10. Despite this, Watchtower has an experienced investment team, utilizing stocks, bonds and trusts as investment vehicles for accumulating wealth. Watchtower has held shares in RAND, a supplier to the U.S. Department of Defense. See the SEC filing or PDF copy for the full document. They have had a registered holding in the H. M. Riley Trust, which was received from the deceased estate of Henrietta Riley. This trust trades in a wide spread of bonds and shares in companies such as ExxonMobil, Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, Philip Morris and Cardinal Health. This trust trades in a wide spread of bonds and shares in companies such as ExxonMobil, Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, Philip Morris, one of the world's largest cigarette manufacturers, and Cardinal Health, who supply medical equipment including for blood transfusions. In 2007, Watchtower had an SEC filing for a $40 million hedge fund through K2STB Fund Limited, located in the Cayman Islands. For a full description see watchtowerlies.org. In 2012, the fund was worth over $3.5 million, and provided the Watchtower with tax-free income of $752,859, as shown in the return of organization exempt from income tax. Watchtower was an attendee at the Goldman Sachs 2012 Growth Markets Summit, Growth Markets Insights, Shaping Global Investment Themes. Whilst being critical of the world's political and commercial systems, Watchtower happily benefits financially from them where it can. For instance, a 17 December 2015 elders letter in Britain advised Jehovah's Witnesses donating to the organization to advise if they were taxpayers, so that Watchtower could claim an additional 25% from the government. An indication of Watchtower's corporate greed is the way it pursues money. Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania vs. Fifth Third Bank outlines a case where Watchtower spent 5 years fighting for a deceased person's bank account containing $99,865. Luther Loy Dietrich originally designated his mother as the beneficiary of his Fifth Third Bank accounts. He later changed the beneficiary to Watchtower, but did not lodge a payable on death beneficiary form with the bank. Upon Dietrich's death in 2005, Watchtower sent notice to Fifth Third Bank for the proceeds of the account, but without the required forms the bank paid the money to Dietrich's estate, which was distributed to his relatives. In 2008, Watchtower filed and lost a suit against Fifth Third Bank for negligence and breach of contract. Watchtower appealed and lost again in 2011. Watchtower pursued the case for 5 years, despite $99,865 being inconsequential to it as a billion-dollar corporation. Watchtower sought money from the Holocaust Victim Assets Litigation Fund, Swiss Banks CV 964849, which was set up to compensate victims of the Holocaust. In a letter dated 7 December 1999, Watchtower applied for compensation payable to Jehovah's Witness Holocaust-era Survivors Fund, Inc., which it incorporated 27 October 2000. Assisting Jehovah's Witness Holocaust survivors may appear commendable, but the primary intention comes to light when reading Watchtower's outline of why it should receive the funds of all eligible Jehovah's Witnesses that had died and left no heirs. Some witnesses died prematurely and left no heirs to make a claim to the Swiss Bank Settlement Fund. However, the legacy of spiritual resistance that they left behind is of great value in the education of future generations about the importance of standing up for the dignity and value of human life. Representing these individuals, the Watchtower would be pleased to devote any allocated monies solely to the interests of Holocaust education and the remembrance of the prisoners who bore the Purple Triangle, according as the court might stipulate. Proposed plan of allocation for Jehovah's Witnesses. Changing procedures. The new century has heralded changes in how Watchtower goes about raising money. With revenue from book sales falling, requests for money have become more open and regular. As discussed above, credit card terminal and directions for online donations are commonplace. The governing body now make regular requests for voluntary donations on JW Broadcasting. Quite startling has been an open dialogue about shortfalls in revenue. The May 2015 episode of JW Broadcasting admitted the organization was projecting a shortfall in cash, with expenses expected to be higher than income over the next fiscal period. Despite then requesting donations, LED ironically claimed the organization differed to churches that coerce followers for money. What a change from the days when Watchtower could say, "Jehovah's Witnesses have never gone begging for finances." Watchtower 1962 May 1 p.278. Subtle changes include the 2016 songbook Sing Out Joyfully to Jehovah changing 2 lines in the song My Prayer of Dedication from Take My Voice and Let It Sing, Praises Always to My King to Take My Silver and My Gold, Nothing, Lord Would I Withhold. A significant change occurred in 2014 regarding Kingdom Halls. Prior to this, if a congregation needed to build a new Kingdom Hall, they would borrow the money needed from Watchtower, and repay it with donations pledged anonymously by each member of the congregation. In 1983, the Society Kingdom Hall Fund was set up so Jehovah's Witnesses could also donate towards the building of Kingdom Halls in areas where publishers were unable to afford the cost of constructing a hall. See Proclaimers pp.344–345. In 2014, a 29 March letter to all congregations announced that Watchtower would no longer provide Kingdom Hall loans and would close the Society Kingdom Hall Fund. Instead, all congregations were instructed to send surplus funds and consider pledging an ongoing amount for the construction of Kingdom Halls and Assembly Halls. This amount would be added to the amount being directed to the Worldwide Work Fund. This would be regardless of whether the congregation had put aside savings towards a new hall or had already paid off their existing hall. A subsequent letter dated 12 May 2014 explained that congregations could set aside reserve funds to cover their liability for any monthly operating expenses and minor repairs. An August 2020 letter to elders clarified that the expected congregation donation into the Worldwide Work Fund for Kingdom Halls should be based on a monthly per publisher amount suggested by the branch office and reviewed by local congregation elders. At first glance, it may seem that congregations were benefiting from Watchtower erasing their loans. However, this was not necessarily seen as a fair arrangement. There was a benefit for congregations in newly constructed halls with large outstanding balances. On the other hand, members of congregations that had extended themselves financially for many years paying off their Kingdom Hall loan were now being provided by Watchtower with a suggested figure to donate towards Kingdom Halls of other congregations. Here is where it gets trickier. Whilst the legal structure varies by country in order to comply with local legal requirements, Kingdom Halls generally used to be set up as separate legal entities, managed by elders representing the local congregations using the hall. Watchtower initially appeared to be generous when it began forgiving Kingdom Hall debts, until the endgame became clear when it started changing the ownership of Kingdom Halls from local congregation titles to Watchtower ownership. Watchtower removed liability from some congregations, but is gaining direct control of a far greater value of assets, all the while pushing for an overall increase in Kingdom Hall-related donations. An example of how assets are being transferred from congregations to Watchtower is shown at the DEC 2020 minutes of a UK congregation, assigning Watchtower's Worldwide Work of Jehovah's Witnesses fund the proceeds of the sale of the UK congregation's water rights. The Articles of Association and bylaws of the same UK congregation also include the clause that if the congregation is dissolved, the assets will be transferred to Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York. There have been a spate of congregations closed and merged into neighboring congregations across the world. The benefit to Watchtower is that proceeds from the sale of the Kingdom Hall are transferred to Watchtower's New York Corporation, as defined in the congregation's Articles of Association. Whilst the above changes are financially obscure and possibly unknown to the average Jehovah's Witness, the follow-on effect is causing discontent. The transfer of Kingdom Hall ownership has been followed by the consolidation of congregations and sale of Kingdom Halls. This can be traumatizing for people that donated to and helped construct a hall that Watchtower has subsequently sold and directed the congregation members to be split up and designated to another congregation meeting in a different Kingdom Hall. Conclusion. Watchtower was founded on the principle that if it needed to solicit money, Jehovah was not backing them. The quotes above show Watchtower regularly solicits, even begs, for donations. In Watchtower's own words, isn't that proof they do not have Jehovah's backing? Articles continue to criticize and ridicule churches for their money-raising tactics yet have a strong culture of money collection and building wealth. The 2013 Watchtower attacks religious greed, prominently displaying a Rolex-wearing preacher on its cover, yet a number of the governing body have appeared wearing Rolex watches as well during Watchtower presentations. Watchtower is critical of churches that demand a tithe. Tithing is based on the Mosaic Law's requirement to donate 10% of one's wage. Is it not a comfort for them to know that in the local congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses they will never be tithed to pay out a percentage of their income? Awake. 1975 September 8 p.26. It may seem excessive for a religion to request a 10% tithe, yet many Jehovah's Witnesses devote far more than this when everything is considered. The 2020 annual report claimed that 1,299,619 of its 8,424,185 publishers are regular pioneers. Regular pioneers commit to spend an average of 16 hours per week preaching, over 30% of the hours required by a full-time job, well in excess of a 10% tithe. Decade after decade, Watchtower boasts that it does not appeal for money. The kingdom halls of this happy group are open to you, and you may attend free of charge, without having to suffer embarrassment by a request for contributions or the passing of a collection plate. Watchtower 1974 September 15 p.559. They never pass collection plates, nor do they send out envelopes to solicit donations. Rather, any who appreciate the spiritual program can discreetly place a donation in a contribution box at the Kingdom Hall. This magazine obviously costs money to print and ship. Yet you will never see commercial advertising or appeals for money. Watchtower 2013 July 1 p.4. This is quite simply a lie. Watchtower magazines contained appeals for money, including great deals of how to donate. At Kingdom Hall meetings, local congregation finances are discussed and donations requested. Likewise, at assemblies and conventions. Resolutions are put forward and voted upon at meetings that commit the congregation to set donation amounts for the worldwide work. Russell's statement that he would not solicit money seemed admirable, different to traditional churches of his time. He could be so bold because Watchtower commenced as a book publishing corporation, using voluntary labor to print and distribute its publications at a profit. Any publishing company is expected to make a profit, but few had Watchtower's luxury of not paying its workers. For around a century, Watchtower printed and sold more religious literature than any other organization. With guaranteed revenue from its followers, and additional sales in the preaching work, billions of dollars of profit were generated. When the lucrative revenue stream of literature sales started to decline in the 1900s, Watchtower was forced into the same position of other religious organizations and push harder for donations to cover costs. Watchtower has the luxury of owning billions of dollars of strategically positioned property, all paid for by donations and free labor. Watchtower has not shied away from profiting from the corporate and political world, with its investment arm benefiting from the rising stock market over the decades. Whilst most followers are not wealthy enough to trade shares, their donations have allowed Watchtower to do so. Let's not forget donations. Though demands for donations were originally less conspicuous than in some churches, they have always been expected from Jehovah's Witnesses. Contribution boxes have claimed a prominent position in kingdom halls and at conventions. Announcements regularly discuss the need for donations, promising blessings bestowed by Jehovah on a cheerful giver. Jehovah's Witnesses would do well to step back and savor the words of the religion's founder that Watchtower petitions for money indicate withdrawal of God's blessing and time to suspend the publication.
What took place there was that I spoke to this brother, and I said, I got a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
And now he's been an elder, he's been a brother for all these years.
Mm-hmm.
I think he finally got baptized somewhere around 1970, and somewhere around there.
Right.
It was a long time ago. And I said, do you know anything about Jehovah's Witnesses, the organization, being associated with the United Nations?
Uh-huh.
And he said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I learned something, that they've been associated with the United Nations,
Mm-hmm.
and not in a governmental way, but they're members of a non-political situation, but they do it with the United Nations.
Right.
After everything you read from the organization about how bad the UN
Mm-hmm.
is and so on and so forth, I was shocked.
Mm.
And I told him that, and he says, no. And he went into this story that I should immediately go to the elders and they'll save my life and this and that,
Uh-huh.
and so on and so forth. And I just told him, let's forget about it now, and that was it.
Right.
Little did I know that he called the elders in
Mm-hmm.
the congregation I'm with,
Yeah.
and because we had a couple of brothers in that area, in this new congregation
Right.
where we were now at,
Mhm.
that came from his congregation, the brother where
So
he's
he knew them
serving.
personally. Yeah.
Yeah. And he made the phone call and he told them what I'd said.
Hmm.
Well, 2 days after I spoke to him, I get the phone call. We have two brothers. We want to come over. We want to
Right.
talk to you, so on and so forth. So the handwriting was on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Two brothers came. One who I loved dearly because he was a fine brother. and I've been his associate, so as to speak, for approximately 5+ years.
Yeah.
And he even was ready to cry when he was there, and they were starting to ask the questions.
Right.
And they started to say that, where did you get this information from? I said, well, let me tell you what information you're talking about. You tell me what you heard. Well, something about the UN and so on and so forth. So I said, well, let me tell you. In other words, you're telling me that this is news to you. You are not aware of this.
Right.
So, number one, that's the way I felt when I learned this just maybe 3 weeks ago or whatever it was.
Right.
And I got the same feelings.
Yeah.
How could this be? So let me tell you what I did. And while they were sitting there, I picked up my phone and I said to Google, tell me about the relationship with Jehovah's Witnesses and the UN.
That's simple.
And within 2 seconds, the voice says, they've been, blah, 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 and the whole story. They were shocked. And
they had no idea.
No idea. One of those brothers has been an elder for probably, I would have to say, somewhere at least 40 years to 50 years. He got baptized 1 year after me, somewhere in 59 or 60 he got baptized. So anyway, they were in shock. And the older brother that I really came to love in the congregation that I was with in the last 5 years or so, I felt very badly for him because he was crying. He took this very, and then I said to him, I said, well, now you know how I felt when I heard this information.
Sure.
Which I just found out, and so on and so forth. So, and the younger brother that he was with, the elder, started to immediately check. He was doing something with the phone. He knows electronics and everything else, and a lot better than me. And he started to see, well, he was typing something in the phone, and he got answers pertaining to those questions.
Right.
And
very eye-opening for him.
Excuse me?
It was very eye-opening for him.
Oh, yes. Both of them never heard of this. And this brother was in the truth, in the same period of time as I was. And starting, maybe with 1 year or 2 years less than me.
Right.
Never saw anything or heard anything like this. Just like myself, was shocked and started to basically have tears coming out. And I felt very, very bad for him.
Yeah.
And then I went and said, well, and there's something else too. The governing body has their own investment program that nobody has ever heard of. I know I never heard of it.
Right.
Did you ever hear of it? And I gave them the name of their stock company that they work with and the organization. And they had this investment
multi-million-dollar portfolio.
Multi-million, and they had it for over 30 years. And I checked it out, and in companies that they were investing in were companies such as Lockheed, which makes weapons and for killing people and so on and so forth.
Right.
And there was another one in there that really hit home, Pfizer. Pfizer with the vaccination situation.
Right.
And they had a lot of that stock.
And they're the ones who are heavily promoting.
And they had a lot of money in this account.
Right.
And it was under a different name. It was owned, but you can see they tell you that it's part of the Jehovah's Witnesses money and so on and so forth. The organization, the Watchtower Society. Well, this was hard for them to believe, and it was hard for me to believe.
Yeah.
But I was now saying, there it is, left and right.
Right.
And so anyway, it was that same time that my wife, I guess, was angry because of what she saw, how they were handling me and everything else.
Yeah.
And she got up and she spent about 5 minutes and let them know what she thought, and she was already out. Here's my basic, she had it already written out, a resignation from the organization and so on and so forth. Anyway.
Elders are terrified of women, mature women, because they can't do much about them, right? They can't remove their privileges because they don't have any to begin with. And and they're too smart.
And when the circuit overseer came a couple of weeks thereafter from this event, he was a very angry man in his final talk to the congregation about how they handled the disfellowshipping of me. And the end result of all of that was the brother that led the 3-man group, who was assigned that, was removed as an elder, and the Kobe, who's been the Kobe of the congregation for many, many years, was also removed. So that's the story that came out. But the end result of all of this is that a lot of truth has been seen by a lot of people that know the real truth about everything. So it's just another situation in the lives of Jehovah's Witnesses, that we all face a problem with the governing body, and the governing body handles and controls everything that takes place. And all these people are obeying the governing body as if it was Jehovah himself, and they are very far removed from Jehovah. Well, the dedication that I made was to Jehovah and to Jesus, not to the organization. And I believe that even though they've changed the wordings a couple of times for baptism, to make it like the way they want people to dedicate themselves to the organization, so as to speak, that doesn't matter to me. The matter is people come into the truth because of the teachings of Jehovah and Jesus Christ, and that's found in the Bible. And what they do and what they have done with disfellowshipping people over the years is a disgrace. It has killed people. It's caused people to become alcoholics. They go on drugs. They commit suicide because they were misused as individuals and not people anymore. It's almost like we're just cats and dogs to the governing body. And I feel very, very bad for the people that suffer through this type of situation. Make sure of all things. Investigate, find out about the organization. In fact, the organization has even stated, find out about us, study about how we teach, and so on and so forth. And I think it's just a shame that they have destroyed the lives of families, mothers and fathers against children, and so on and so forth, and husbands and wives even, with this disfellowshipping thing and then they do the shunning thing, which is really, really life-threatening to the average person when nobody talks to them anymore. And many of us, like myself, who've been in the truth for a long time, you have no other friends other than Jehovah's Witnesses. And now when you get put out and nobody wants to talk to you, you're devastated. And fortunately, my wife and I, we have continued in our studies of Jehovah. We will never stop. And we are dedicated to the service to Jehovah and worship of Jehovah and the following of Jesus Christ. And no organization, whatever its name, will stop us from doing that. And I recommend to everybody that is part of that organization to do your homework. Take a real good look at what you're hearing that comes from the platforms. Check your Bible. And then find out what the real truth is. And don't become a slave to men.